Hi everybody, this is Raylene from the Love the Crafter channel. Thanks for joining us again. Today we're going to make something a little bit different. Well, every week's different, isn't it? But today we are going to make some handmade paper. I'd love you to join me in doing this. Watch it and see if you get inspired. Handmade paper is great because you can use it for really lots and lots of different things where you'd normally use average paper. You can make your own cards or little gift tags or do some calligraphy and frame it, whatever you like. Here's the paper that I made. I made 5 sheets from one little food processor bowl full of pulp, paper pulp. And you can see that it's quite unique. It's quite rustic looking because that's the nature of making your own paper. The edges are a bit wobbly and tapery, and there's thick patches and thin patches in here. You'll see all these spotty dotty bits. These are dried flower petals that are crushed up and sprinkled in the emulsion in the tub. Also in that tub, which I usually put some of my Christmas decorations in, some glitter had got into the bottom, and when I made the paper and it dried, I could see some of this glitter is showing up in the paper. Hey, that's fine. I'm fine with that. That's absolutely good. You can add colored cardboard into it if you want. I didn't. I just used all white because I've got a plan for this paper for next week. But I did put in those colored bits, and underneath you have a look where those dried flower petals sort of made a stain, but I'm okay with that. So you never quite know what the paper's going to look like when it's made, but I really like it. And I made it myself, and you can do it too. So here's the limerick that goes with this craft. Well, we're making some cute handmade paper. Don't fret if the edgy bits taper. Add some colour or glitz. See them show up as bits. It's good fun and a bit of a caper. There we go. That's our limerick. Oh, now a joke before we carry on. So did you know that Neil Diamond's name used to be Neil Cole until the pressure got to him? I thought that was a good one. Okay, so let's get on with today's craft. So I've gathered the things that I think that we'll need to make our own paper. So some of them are here, some of them I will just tell you about. But what I did to make the mold and decal, which is what we're going to set the paper on, is I bought 2 really cheap frames just from the $2 shop. They didn't even have glass in them, they just had sort of perspex, plastic stuff. So I'm going to leave one of them like that, just empty, and the other one, that forms the decal. And the other one I'm going to cover in some netting, and I'm just going to staple it on with a stapler. So we're going to do all of this in the demonstration, make the actual mold and decal ready for making the paper. So I'll demonstrate how to do this. A little bit of masking tape that will go around the edges to cover those staples. So that will make the mold and decal. We'll also need, of course, paper and a bucket. I don't have a bucket here, but lots and lots of paper. You can use some coloured paper, whatever paper you want. I've just got some scraps here, and I'll be ripping those up into smallish pieces and soaking them in a bucket of water. You can make the whole process a bit faster by putting in hot water and just leave it in that bucket for a couple of days. Don't leave it in there for like a week or 2 because it will go moldy. So just a few days until it goes really, really pulpy. I've also, a few days ago, I picked some flowers from the garden and pressed them and dried them. So I'll crush those up and add those into the water as I gather it up with the mold and decal. So that's optional though. You don't have to do this whole thing with the dried flowers. Of course, you are going to need a large container. I've got this tub here. So I hope you can see this tub. Not exactly how big it is, but whatever tub you use has to be at least big enough to fit in the mold and decal so that when you scoop them in, you pick up the pulp and you don't have any trouble sort of getting this in and scooping. If it's too small, you can't sort of do the scooping action. So that's another thing you'll need. When you take the paper out, you're going to need to sort of sponge a lot of the moisture out of it. So I've got some thick sponges there. And I'm going to lay each sheet that I make onto some thin interfacing. But you could use just clean dry cloths if you want as well. So apart from that, you just need some pegs and a clothesline to hang up the paper on to dry. And a blender. A blender is the other thing that I haven't got sitting here. But a blender is what I'm going to use once I'm really satisfied that the paper has soaked long enough in the bucket and is really, really falling apart. Then I'm going to demonstrate for you how to put it through the blender and really, really turn it into pulp. So if you've got a fruit juice blender, that would be fantastic. So I think that's practically everything that we're going to need to make our paper. So I'm going to make this decal now. And I've just wrapped the netting around the end of the photo frame. And I've opened up the stapler. So here we go. Pull it firmly. Do this side. And I'll go into the middle. So I'm going to keep moving around, pulling it firmly. I'll do up this other end. put it quite firmly. Perhaps I'll go right in the middle now. As firmly as I go. So I'm going to do the sides. And that's looking quite good. So I'll continue it and finish and be back shortly. There we go, that's done. I'm quite happy with that. You can see that's quite smooth all the way across, smooth and flat. So that's going to be what we scoop up the paper pulp with to make our sheets of paper. So my juice blender is on the fritz, so I'm going to use this food processor, which will do the same job. So I've got the nice sharp blade in there, and I'm going to, I've got my pulp here that's been soaking for a couple of days, and I've just used white paper because it was scrap paper, but it's just mostly white with perhaps a little bit of printing on it. But I've chosen it because I've got an idea of something that I want to do with this paper. So I want it to be plain and not coloured. Apart from the bits of flower petals I'm going to decorate the paper with, it's just mostly going to be a plain colour. So there we go. Now it needs lots of water. There's no ratio for this. So it's not as if you've got to have 2 parts water to 1 part paper or anything. Just have plenty of water in there to make an emulsion. So I'm not going to film this whizzing around, it's going to be deafening. So I'm just going to turn the camera off and do the whizzing with my food processor, and we'll be back in a minute. Well, I think you'll agree that is looking pretty pulpy. That's very much what I'm looking for. And that has been whizzing around in there for about 3 minutes. I think I'll put the lid back on and give it a little bit longer, but you're not going to get much finer than that. I ripped up my scrap paper and soaked it, but if you have a shredder and you've got a bunch of paper sitting at the bottom of your shredder, that's already pre-ripped and ready to go. So you could recycle shredder paper if you want. Be creative. Some nice coloured cardboard if you want colour in there, whatever you want. I'm going to whiz this around a little bit longer and see you soon. So here's the pulp in the container, in the tub, with plenty of water in there as well. You want to have plenty of water in there. In fact, I'm going to add some more water in there. It probably needs to come up to about 1/3 of the way full so that I can really scoop that mould and decal into it, because at the moment it's about that deep on my finger, and it probably needs to be about this deep so I can really scoop. Now into this water I'm going to put a small handful of, that's probably enough, of those dried flower petals that I did the other day. I pressed them and dried them, and I don't want too much of that, but I am going to put in some more, whoopsie, a big lumpy bit, oh no it's not. I am going to put some more water in now before I do the actual scooping. So here's my prepared decal, and here is the frame that sits on top, and it's just going to go on upside down like that, and that frame sits directly on top of the decal, and it's going to form a border for the pulp to sit in. So there it is, sitting there like that on top. Okay, and so now I'm going to, hope you can see this, let me tilt this just a touch more. Okay, so just keeping these two together as much as I can. I'm going to start on the side closest to me and scoop down and up like so, and give it a swish, and of course lots of water is running out the bottom, which is what I want. Can you see that? Okay, some little colourful bits of petal in there, so that's nice. And I can't show you all the steps at once because I have to move things, but I am going to take this frame off the decal, and you'll see that it has nicely framed that pulp into a nice A4 square. Now there's lots and lots of water in here, so I'm going to turn the camera off and get the rest of the bits and pieces, move this tub away, get the other bits and pieces ready for me to be able to get this pulp off this decal, and I can make another piece. So I have a clean tea towel down here, dry clean tea towel, and a piece of that lightweight interfacing. It's not iron-on interfacing, it's just a roll of interfacing that I keep ready for when I need to do some tracing. It's very see-through, you can see that. So that's ready to take the paper. So I'm just going to grab that decal, bring it over. So here it is. So this is the moment of truth, and I need to, of course, line this paper up on top so that it sits on top of this, which is where it's going to dry for the next couple of days. Now I'm not going to lift this up because I need to get some of that moisture out of that paper before I try to lift up the decal. So this is where the sponges come in. Try to get up as much of that liquid as I can and bring it out. Now, if when I lift this decal up, if it pulls away if some of the pulp is still left on the decal, well, that means it's a big fat hole in the paper, doesn't it? So we will put all of that pulp straight back into the tub and do it again. It's not wasted. Just do it again until we get a clean piece of paper and no rips in it, no holes in it. But the better we do this sponging, absorbing up as much liquid as we can, the more likely we'll have success when we take up this decal. So let's have a go now. Hold down that interfacing. Just go very slowly. So with my right hand I'm just holding down the ends of that interfacing and gently lifting up the decal. And I think we have success. There it is. Look at that. Tiny bits of pulp left on the decal, but that's nothing. Now it's a bit hard to see because the background is kind of fairly light coloured, but I'll attempt to lift this up a bit closer to the camera so that you can see pretty little bits of flower petals in there as well, just a few. But that's exactly what I was going for, so that's really good. Now, obviously there's more pulp left in that tub, so now what I will do is continue the process and put another dry piece of interfacing over the top of that and just stack them up. I might actually, instead of putting a dry piece of interfacing over the top of this, just put this somewhere to dry, grab another clean tea towel and just lay them out somewhere out in the sunshine. Here in Perth we get lots of sunshine, so these won't take long at all to dry. And when they're dry enough, I will actually peg them up on the clothesline. But that's basically how it's done, and I'm very happy with that. And I can see just by lifting it up, whoopsie, that's a bit of my pussycat's hair, Freddie. He wanders through the house and fluff just flies everywhere. But I can see by looking at that it's an even coverage. There's not really thin bits and thick bits, and that's because I shook the decal backwards and forwards like this in the tub, and it made a fairly even coating of the pulp across the decal. I'm really happy with that, so I'm just going to continue and make as many sheets as I can. So I'm going to demonstrate a second way to get this paper off the decal, just slightly different. I'm using another clean tea towel. This one has got a texture to it and a pattern to it, you can see that, and that might make quite an interesting pattern on the paper. So the way I'm going to do this is bring the decal across with the pulp sitting on it, all ready to go. I'm going to sit it down there on the tea towel. I've got a nice clean piece of interfacing which I'm laying across like that, sitting a clean wooden board over the top. Now I'm going to flip it so that you don't have such a risk of when you flip it, the whole thing sort of falls and collapses. That's the theory. It went quite well the last time I did the usual way, but let's just see what happens. Do it this way, because it might work and it might be preferable. But I still think getting as much liquid out of that paper with these sponges as you can definitely improves your chances of getting a clean sheet of handmade paper once we take the decal off. It's not an exact science though, it's a little bit hit and miss, so, you know, as I said, if it tears and breaks, chuck it back in the tub and do it again. So I've estimated that with that food processor full of the pulp, just in that one full container, I'll probably get about 4 or 5 pieces of handmade paper. So, you know, if you want to experiment with it, just maybe do one lot at a time and see how you go. Okay, so now I'm going to hold down that interfacing and gently and slowly lift up the decal and see what we have. So far so good. Yeah, look, that way worked as well. One thing I need to mention before I go on, you can see those, I mentioned these before, these little fuzzy wuzzy bits that are left on the decal. Make sure you wash this off completely in between making each new piece of paper, because if this dries at all in the process and then you scoop more on top of it, it kind of can tend to make the next one kind of rip and tear. So make sure you start with a clean decal, especially these bits that, see the bits that have gathered in under there, so give it a really good rinse. The bits under there that have gathered, yeah, so clean it off really well. But that's come up great, so I'm going to move that wooden board and just gently slide this over onto this, and there you go. You can see it a bit better now with that blue and white background, but that's looking very nice. I'm very happy with that. Little tiny bits of dried petal in that, not too much. I didn't want too much, I just want the suggestion of some flowers in there. So that's good. I'm going to continue on, but there's 2 different ways that you can take the paper off the decal, so go with whatever works for you. So here's the homemade paper that I made with the decal and mold last night. I've had it sitting overnight, so it's mostly dry. A little bit of moisture still left in, so I'm just going to peel off the interfacing. And it's quite normal for the paper to be jaggedy around the edges. That's absolutely fine. And you can see there's a slight imprint of the tea towel too. And I'm okay with that. I think it gives it some texture and gives it something a bit interesting. And the side that has the little pieces of dried petal, they're still there, and underneath the colour sort of has stained the paper, and I like that as well. So you never quite know what you're going to get with handmade paper. I'm just going to peel all of these off, and what I'll do is I'll take them outside to my clothesline and I'll hang them up. I'm not going to obviously bend that paper over the line. I'm just going to clip it onto the line and keep this quite flat and straight. Just got tiny bit of dampness in there. So here are the 5 sheets of handmade paper, all finished, all completely dry, and ready to do whatever I want to do with them. So there we go. So that is how to make your own homemade paper. I hope you do have a go at doing it. Maybe get a few friends around, and now that you've got the mold and decal all sorted out, it's really simple and really fun as well. So don't forget to do all the usual things, like, subscribe if you haven't done that, put your comments in, show us your photos of how yours turned out, and in the meantime, before next week, don't forget to keep on laughing and keep on crafting. See you next time. Bye.